Welcome to the Hot Young Designers Club podcast.
I'm Rebecca Plum, your big sister.
And I'm Sean Surha, your GBF.
We're not that hot or that young,
but we believe it's a state of mind that helps us build adaptable and profitable businesses.
We rely on the support of our design besties to get through each day.
So let's explore the emotional, practical, and humorous sides of being interior designers.
Welcome to the club. Hi, Sean.
What's up, Rebecca?
We have a original hottie here.
OG status for our hottie audience.
We are welcoming Abigail Horace today.
Yes, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Abby, tell us, I know we've talked a little bit about your path and we've been in DMs together a lot, but I'd love for our audience to hear.
We're all in DMs a lot.
Yes. We're DMers. Tell us about your career path and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Abigail Marcelo Horace. I am the owner and principal designer of Casa Marcelo. We are an interior design firm specializing in full home design, new builds and renovations here in Falls Village, Connecticut. We're in the northwest corner of Connecticut, which is near the Berkshires. So I kind of take over Northwest Connecticut, Berkshires, and I do a lot of projects in New York City, which is where I'm from. And so we really focus on creating spaces where our clients are the focus and the muse of the space. And I don't push my design on people, but I really try to see their potential in their space.
Okay, perfect. How can you tell us so you're on your own now. How long have you been running your own business?
We have been running our business for 4 years officially. I would say it's probably 6 in reality. But I started this business on the side. It was a side hustle for a little bit. I was working for an interior design firm. I've been in the interior design industry for over 10 years at that point. And I wanted to challenge myself in a way. And also, I think when you work for other people, you really get pigeonholed into one thing. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't feel like I was designing enough. And I also wanted to get out of the kind of redundant environment that I was in. And I wanted to start something that was a little more inclusive. So that's how I started Casa Marcelo.
Can you go into what you mean by redundant?
Yes. So
because we haven't worked for commercial firms, the two of us. So it's a totally different experience.
Of course. So, I grew up in the arts. I was definitely a child of the arts. My parents put us in art, dance classes, music classes. I played clarinet for most of my life. I played piano. I've done dance, everything.
Fantastic.
I have 2 sisters and 1 brother. My brother is still a jazz pianist. One of my sisters was a vocalist. My mother's a vocalist. My father is a sound engineer, but he's also an electrician by trade. And my other sister was a dancer. So we all grew up in the arts and we all love the arts. And then I guess once I got to high school and I was changing up my room a lot and doing a lot of things with my room, started watching Extreme Makeover Home Edition. And I was this can actually be something that I can follow and pursue as a career. And I guess my brother was really a lot of the decision that I made. I didn't want to be no offense to my brother, but I didn't want to be a starving artist.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to be someone who made money off of my art, right? And so that's kind of what led me into interior design. I went to school, a 4-year school, NYIT, New York Institute of Technology in Old Westbury, New York. And I graduated in 2010. And then that's when I started getting into the field. I was in the field beforehand, 2006, 2007. I started working in various showrooms and firms just to get some things on my resume because I already knew it was going to be a difficult path, leaving school, especially as a person of color. So I did all the things. I volunteered, studied abroad, I had all the things on my resume, right? Because I wanted to make sure I landed the perfect job, right? And so when I got out, I guess reality set in, right? Because the first job that I got wasn't amazing. Like, I wasn't being called left and right, like, hey, come work with me.
And this is 2010, you said?
This is 2010.
So
yeah.
kind of a rough time.
We're like in the
totally.
depths of the recovery still.
Totally. Yeah. And so I kind of hustled a little bit. I worked a lot of odd jobs, but still in the field. And, for 10 years, just working at various different firms. I worked for WeWork for a time. I worked for a large company, HLW. Those didn't actually last long. I'll tell you more about that.
Wait, so did you get to go to any of those WeWork parties?
No, I didn't. So I didn't last there. I didn't last long at all. And that was one of my biggest heartbreaks, I guess. When I worked for WeWork, I was the only Black Latina designer in the whole entire space. It was their first space that they had acquired.
Wow.
And I remember the interview process being really long. And once I got there, just a lot of culture clash in general.
I mean, there was a lot of clashing, it seems like.
Yeah, it was a lot of, the rumors are true. Like, there were a lot of people staying there for very, very long hours. And that just didn't feel right to me. I know that there's an opportunity and that you're supposed to, hustle for opportunities, but I also believe in having a work-life balance, and doesn't matter if you have children or if you're married, like, you need a life beyond your work.
100%.
So we work 24/7.
Okay.
But I was definitely not really there long. And once I was let go from that job, and I think I was there for probably a month. And when they sat me down and they told me, I remember one time, there was a few weeks before that, somebody had asked me to say something in Spanish because they didn't believe that I spoke Spanish. And so they were like testing me, like as if they would even know what I was saying.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like if you're saying you're like the only person there, how are they going to test it? Like,
right, exactly. And
also the idea of having to test and prove your culture for people, for anybody, like, wow, so whack.
Perform, yeah.
And that particular person was like, no offense, but a woman from Greenwich, Connecticut, where I'm pretty sure, she had a red carpet laid out for her at all times. So it was just it felt very demeaning in a way, and disrespectful to kind of ask me, to say something in Spanish. But then a few weeks after that, they sat me down in a conference room and they said, we just don't think you're a really good fit for this company. And I was like, okay, so can you give me examples of like how I'm not a good fit? And I just don't understand like where this is going. They were like, we've already made our minds up, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, can you give me an example? I'm sorry, we don't have any examples. That's what they said to me. And I was like, okay, to me, it was very clear that it was just a cultural clash, and that
it's like we don't like you, or we don't want you here, kind of is what it's sounding like. And they didn't want to have to justify it.
Lucky they didn't get a lawsuit.
Right.
I mean, there are plenty of others.
I think that's definitely, one of the downfalls, right? Like, there are things that are discriminatory in a lot of practices. But I also feel like a lot of people of color are at a disadvantage because we don't have access to lawyers or attorney fees or things like that. So we don't even try to get into it, right? We just kind of let it go and call it a bad experience and keep it moving.
And it's just adding to your distress and trauma that you're already feeling from losing 100%. Your job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and how could you pay for all of that? Like, go get another job so you can work to survive, but then also pay for representation or a mediator or an attorney or whoever. Like, that's coming out of your survival money. That's coming out of what you need to just move on with your life, literally. So it just adds insult to it to have to keep putting more hurdles in front of getting treated fairly.
More.
Completely.
Okay.
And I think I don't want this to be like, a kind of negative situation where I'm telling you all about our negative experiences, but I also want people to be aware of our perspective and how we go through our careers in general, where I often felt like all the accolades did come into play, right? For me, a lot of people looked at my resume and felt like it was very impressive. I also have been told that I have a white name. So people would, hire or ask me to interview, and I could sometimes see the disappointment, like walking into the room, like,
Oh my
oh,
God.
they were expecting somebody else that looked, that was like maybe a white Abigail. I don't know. My mother named me a Hebrew name, right? It's a biblical name. So I don't see that as a white name, but I think a lot of people do. And so it was disappointing to see that oftentimes when I would walk into interviews and like then feel like I had the pressure on me even more to perform and to, prove that I should be here. So that was my experience interviewing and all of that. But it's really hard. I mean, I think it's just something, like I said, with we were talking before about speaking with students about my experience, and a lot of them resonated with it. My school right now, NYT, the last thesis class that I spoke to was probably around 80 to 90% people of color or foreigners. So a lot of them resonated with the experience that I had, and a lot of them were already working at firms and also felt the same way. So I think it's something, worth highlighting.
Because that's right now, that's very current still.
It is. So yeah, I mean, I think also a lot of it came into play with me being from New York City and being in a diverse city. Right. And going into an office where I was the only one felt very strange to me. I came from a neighborhood that was predominantly Black. I went to school with people who were foreigners and people who were a lot of people of color, a lot of Latinos. And I had a lot of like Israeli friends and Jewish friends and Polish and Albanian, like all of that. It was a melting pot in Queens. So to come from that and then go into an office where a lot of people aren't even from New York. They're from, outside of New York, or they just moved to New York for this job and things like that. Yeah. So it was also a culture clash in that way, where I didn't feel like they understood my New York behavior.
In New York culture.
And you were in New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really weird.
That's a lot of people in New York, though. But so it's like really shocking for me to imagine that environment, like that sort of out of body experience of leaving what is like a very diverse section cut of life in New York, like on the subway, walking on the streets, and then you're just like walking into this like old boys club once you get through the doors of the office every day, or like that environment of just like, oh, it gets left behind once you pass the security desk. Like,
oh yeah. And also the other part of that is, when I wasn't doing high-end residential design, going from a train station where people are panhandling and, homeless people are laying on the platform basically. Then you go to a penthouse that has like a $50,000 sofa. And,
right.
it just puts things in perspective for you of like how people are living in New York City versus like how the rest of New York City is living.
Right.
And so it really helped me to understand that I really feel everybody deserves a beautiful space, no matter what tier they are in. And I also feel that, it's up to us sometimes to give back to our communities. If we're seeing this much money come in, then we should be able to take a percentage of that and give it back to the people who really need it. Because we're in this high end area where we can see that and take from that and give back. And that's where like my philanthropic, but that's like not part of this conversation, but that's part of like how I feel about philanthropy and how I want my business to eventually be able to give back to the community.
Okay. So when you were talking about speaking to the group of students now, and there was like a lot more students of color and from other countries, does that feel like a big change from when you were there? Just the student population itself?
Oh, yeah.
Which that's like kind of hopeful to me, that at least they feel like the doors are opening to them, even though they may not yet be fully embraced when they get to their jobs yet. Yeah. Like, do you feel that?
That's very true. So when I was in school, I was probably one of 3 Black students in my graduating class. And so I think, yes, that's definitely like a sign of change. My program was on Long Island. So that's it's like kind of Jersey. It's like a small Jersey in New York. So so that was my first culture clash, like in my life. That was my first culture clash of realizing, oh, not everybody in New York is like me in Queens, New York.
Right.
But then I think that when I started speaking to the students, I did realize that there are way more people of color now. And I agree with you that it's definitely opening the doors. But that program is in New York City.
Okay.
Now it's in New York City. They didn't offer it in New York City at the time I was in school. So I think it's just more reflective of the population in New York City versus Long Island, where it was mostly white and not as many Black students.
But even for them to make that move, whether it was intentional or not, is kind of ushering in a more diverse future of designers. I mean, one of our missions here is to make sure we're like reaching diverse audiences and feeling very inclusive. I know like all of these like buzzwords are kind of cringy sometimes, but like I think having for everyone listening, anyone who has any kind of platform or even just eyeballs, like to just have some awareness of what you're bringing into your brain, and are you opening yourself to new ideas? And I think the more we all can do to promote, so it's not otherness anymore, like just promote different types of people that maybe it's not a lifestyle you grew up with, but it's still, I don't know, in the fabric of all of our lives, like all of our differences and samenesses. And I don't know, it's so much more interesting.
It's part of our humanness, right? Yes. So I think that when you invite people of other cultures into your firms and see the value in them and don't treat it as an opportunity for them, right? But an opportunity for you to grow and develop and to get a different perspective of like how certain things should be designed. I think that helps and kind of sows into your business. And I think that what my experience has been often is that I'm seen as like, this is a great opportunity for you, right? Like, oh, so I'm so happy. Thank you for the opportunity. But I also felt like in that same vein, that was an opportunity for them to pay me less, not give me benefits. A lot of the jobs I had didn't have benefits, things like that, where it was just like, why am I here? And that was kind of what pushed me to make Casa Marcelo, because I just kept feeling like, why am I here? And why am I hustling so hard for companies that won't sew into me the way that I'm sewing into them?
Right. You're giving like your best creative energy and trying to show them, oh, look, I'm 100% always with you, giving everything I possibly have to be great at this, and probably working harder than a lot of your contemporaries or peers around you, like in order to just prove that you still should have that seat with them. And they just need to think of it like as this skill. It's a whole different skill base that you're bringing in, even just with layering on your education, but your cultural experiences and the things that you can share about the way that people live and the people use their homes. Like the fact that they can just ignore that whole vault of experience. It's not surprising at this point, but it's shocking that it's still that way. Like,
right. And I speak Spanish, and a lot of laborers are Spanish. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was a huge asset for me when I would go to interviews and like, yes, I can communicate with the contractors. I can communicate with the movers thoroughly. Like there will be no language barrier. We can talk to them, and not seeing that as a star, or maybe seeing it as a star, but still seeing it as like, well, this is an opportunity for them to be on our team, you know? And I think it goes both ways. It is an opportunity, but it goes both ways. So yeah, it's a journey.
How do you think that's changed the way that you're doing things in your own business? Because you get to set the direction and the tone and all of that. Like, how has that experience you had? Yeah. Like, how does it change what you now work with on a day-to-day?
So when I was working in the field, I think I said this, but I probably 8 out of 10 jobs, I was the only Black or Latina woman on the team. Out of all of the jobs that I've worked, and who knows, they're countless, I probably had 2 to 3 clients that were people of color. And so that was something that I just felt needed to change, right? It wasn't by design, but ever since starting my business, I would say probably 85% of my clientele are people of color. Mm. And that has brought me so much joy because like I said before, I feel like everyone deserves a beautiful home. And I see that as sewing into my community. I see that as giving back to my community through my services. But it's been such a joy to be able to do that when I didn't have it when I was working for other companies. And then the other thing that I did once I realized I was probably the only one, I started to kind of seek community. And the way that I did that was through Instagram. So I started following a lot of Black designers. Nicole White is one of my favorite ones to follow. And she's such a sweetheart. Like she never thinks too highly of herself. She's always DMing and in the DMs and, you know, just kind of building that community for myself so I could see that it was possible. And I think that gave me the confidence to go after it myself. I had one more experience. I was moved up to Connecticut for a job 4 years ago. And by that time I had my son. He was about a year old and we wanted to get out of New York City. I kept feeling like, what is the point of staying here when my workplace is not diverse or, you know, it's not as diverse as New York City? What's the point? I could move to the suburbs and be in basically the same firm if I were in the suburbs.
Yeah, so that's so true.
So I was like, I just want a backyard for my son. We moved here for a job and they kind of made a position for me, a senior designer position, because they really liked what I had to give. And I told myself, if this is another toxic environment or if this is another environment where I don't see myself thriving, I'm just going to start my own business. And so 2 weeks before COVID hit, things were not working out right. And I had a long conversation with my bosses and I just decided, you know what, this is the end for me. And that's when I started Casa Marcelo. And then 2 weeks later, I was like, what did I do? But but it actually worked out because people were in their homes and it was amazing. I mean, I had a lot of business during that time and it's kind of slowing down now actually, but I had a lot of business during that time because of COVID. So that's how I got into Casa Marcelo. I mean, it was really kind of like, I'm fed up with this situation. And if I can't be in an office and feel comfortable with myself or feel like or not have to feel like I have to code switch, I just don't feel like I can do it anymore. Like I was already 30, 31, 32, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And so that's how I started Casa Marcelo. And with Casa Marcelo, I think that I tried to be inclusive with the types of resumes and that I bring in and people that I bring in to work with us. But I also feel like our clientele has definitely changed. And I feel so much more comfortable speaking to people who look like me or who came from the same backgrounds, or it's their first time buying a home. They have no idea what they're doing. And, you know, things like that where I can really relate to them versus, you know, the types of clients I had in New York City. No, and I will still take them, but, you know, they have like a nanny for each kid and they live in a $12 million brownstone. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a different, it's just a different demographic. And I think that it's been great to be of service to them.
So Abby, I feel like something that I hope young designers, and especially designers that have felt others or othered, or like they're not sure if they can go out on their own. I feel like something that you said that is an important thing to remember is, like you said, like 85% of your client base is people of color, and you didn't necessarily like go out like waving a flag, like that's what you were looking for. But just because you are you showing up and being yourself and doing luxury design, you are attracting those types of people, because they don't have to code switch. Because I think there's even the client side that is like, I don't want to hire this old white lady to do my house. Yes. Like, they're not going to get it.
That is 100% right. Yep. And I think that is definitely part of it, because I feel like they talk to me like I'm a family member. And it's really, really a different dynamic than what I had when I was in the industry. It's such a breath of fresh air to be able to really be myself, truly myself, and be like, girl, that wallpaper isn't working. I don't do purple, like, or say, just be upfront about things instead of like trying to hide it behind some professional way of saying things, or comfortable ways of saying things to people, where I could really be just transparent. And that has been just amazing for me in general, for my mental health and everything.
And for them, like, I think they probably feel like, I think we all need to remember, I'm sure we all know this, but we are in people's homes. Like, it's their most sacred, intimate place. And I think that, like, I know, like, I have a lot of clients that for cultural reasons, different reasons, don't want shoes in their house. And I know it feels like I've had it happen where they feel uncomfortable asking it. And so now it's just an automatic thing. Like, I never want anyone to feel uncomfortable asking me to behave in a way that is their lifestyle for whatever reason. So there's things that I keep adding to my kind of repertoire of like openness and understanding. Yeah, I'm not just going to assume that I can just tromp around your house with shoes. I mean, that's just one little thing. Right. But it's important to people.
It is important. And I think
that they're comfortable with us.
Yes. And I also think that people of color try to support one another. So when they see that you are starting your own business, or you're trying to, start something for yourself, they're so much more supportive. I've heard plenty of clients like say to me, you're doing your thing. Like, I'm definitely supporting you. Whenever I get this house or whatever, I'm going to contact you. Like, and they refer me a lot. And so it's been a very supportive environment. And that is something that helps me cultivate my own business and also my confidence in what I'm doing. I've had many years of experience in this business, but being amongst a lot of the non-diverse environments has definitely beaten down my confidence in like myself and like who I am as a designer. And so I think it's rebuilding now with the types of clients that I have. I used to get, like, when I was in the industry, I used to get the most difficult clients. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I used to get like the crappy projects that nobody wanted sometimes, or like the clients that were just, and sometimes my bosses didn't believe me about like how they were treating me or things like that. And so it really just kind of took a toll on the confidence that I had in my bosses too. Like, it was kind of like every man for themselves, right? And I didn't want to be in that
gaslighting you, and you're like questioning your own.
Definitely
like,
felt gaslighted.
Like, is it
many
me?
times.
Like, you're like, what am I the one who's causing? Like, is it something I'm saying or doing? And you're like, wait a minute,
or interpreting, but no.
Yeah, like, it's enough to make you question any skill or ability you have.
Right. And I think as a Black woman also, you're always like walking on eggshells to not be labeled as like, what is that called? Like a difficult Black woman, or, like
angry Black woman.
Yeah, syndrome. Angry Black woman. Yeah. Like, you're always trying not to do those things or say exactly what you feel, so that, or always have a professional mannerism. so that you're not labeled in that way. And so I felt like I was always doing that, especially with difficult clients. Like, I know they, come to my bosses and say, this person treated me this way, and not really being transparent, but like, I really, they really didn't treat me this way. And then they're like interrogating me instead of,
yeah,
interrogating
it's like asking
the
you,
client. And I'm like, whose team
like,
are you
versus
on?
saying like, well, what did the client do, and tell me more, and why are they doing that? It's like, well, what did you say? Did you come at a bad time? Were they upset about? And you're like, hold on a minute, I didn't do anything wrong here. Like, this is how this person is treating behavior. And if anything, this idea, like, I think what's tough is I'm glad that you found a path to your business and are creating this lifestyle for yourself, for your family, for your children, for the way you want to live. And and I want to acknowledge that along with that, that not everyone is going to be in that place and might, just like you, have to stay in a job longer than they should, or in an environment that's not healthy for them so long. And that it's raising this constant awareness of, we shouldn't all as people be living like that. We shouldn't have to be forced to be in these hostile work environments or these harassing work environments. And by you having to hide it and essentially, like, you at some point have to make the call, like, I have to leave. I can't be here anymore because it's not healthy for me. And I can only imagine.
But it sounds like you also didn't have support from like coworkers either, like peers.
Not really. Everything was for themselves. But
yeah,
I had, I think
that's so much of the design world too.
I think supportive is the word. Yeah, it is part of the design world. And I think that support is the key word, though. Like, being able to be supported as a person of color in the office, and I think that goes back to opportunity versus value, right? Like, not just treating it as an opportunity for this person, but understanding their value to the business and to the company, and supporting them in the ways that they need to make it, and to feel like, once a person of color feels supported in a business, they will be loyal. Like, I would be loyal to you. I will be loyal to you because I feel supported. But when I don't get that support, then I'm just feeling like, well, what am I here for?
Was it always your dream to have your own business, or do you feel like you kind of were a little bit forced into it?
I do feel a little forced into it because I really felt like I was climbing this ladder. And at some point during my career, I was just like, this ladder's invisible. There's no
missing
ladder.
Some rungs.
Yeah. like, why am I working so hard for these people? I'm just going to start my own business, and I'm going to cultivate an environment that's inclusive and supports their team and is understanding and is flexible. Once I had a baby and I was in one of my high-end offices, I didn't feel supported then either. I had maternity. That's a whole nother thing. But I went on maternity leave. I came back and I was expected to be full throttle Abby pre-baby. And I'm like, my priorities have completely shifted. That's first of all. Secondly, I'm not getting enough sleep at night. So
my brain,
my brain is just not.
Times,
yeah.
like.
Yeah. Like, that's just not possible. But at the same time, I'm here and I'm trying my best, right? So just be supportive of where I'm at and work with me. And that's kind of the environment that I want to cultivate here. And that's why I started Casa Marcelo. It really was, I felt like I was pushed into it. I'm a hopeful and optimistic person in general. Mm-hmm. And I always, every time I got a job, I was like, this is it. I'm going to be here for like 15 be a lifer. Years, like this, I'm going to have, I'm going to have my second child here. Like the last job I had, I was like, I'm going to have my second child here. I'm going to, stay here for a couple, I'm going to be their senior designer for, 10 years, whatever. Didn't work out again. And, it would just always be a letdown. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I had told myself before I got that job, like, I'm not going to look for more jobs. I'm just going to start my own. And that's kind of what pushed me into it.
Because I guess I wonder about if there's anyone listening who is working for a firm and for whatever reason feels, I don't know, unsupported or pushed aside, or they see people in their environment. I mean, I know I've heard of firms that aren't the most inclusive, and designers are witnessing things that their bosses are doing, and everyone feels kind of paralyzed, and it's clearly an abuse of power and probably illegal. And it's like, I just don't know if you have advice to give yourself, if you were looking back and you're like in a position where you don't want to start your own business or you don't feel ready to do it. Like, I don't know, is there anything that you can think of that you wish you knew now or then?
Well, I guess I always say this to people, like, I don't regret the path that I took, and I don't regret all of the jobs that I've had. I think that in even the negative experience, I've learned what I don't want to be and what I don't want to have in my firm, right? Or how it's a learning whichever way it goes. I do think that, it does strengthen, it gives you a thick skin to work for firms sometimes that are like very diva environment. And I think that at least working for one firm for like 3 years, a good high-end firm, to be able to understand how this machine works, I think is really useful. But sometimes I feel like I stayed in it too long. I think I could have left earlier and gotten further in Casa Marcelo than I am now. So I guess my advice would be, like, whenever you feel ready, just go and just know that if it's the right path for you, or if it's aligned, or if the universe allows it, then things will just start happening for you, and opportunities will just come up, because that's what happened for me. I don't feel like I wanted to, but I was like, I told myself, I gave myself this promise, and I'm going to do it. And things just started coming through the door for me. And I think that also is a karma thing of like how many years I've put into this, and how much stress it's caused me, and how much optimism I had about it. And then just getting that, threefold into my business has been truly a blessing. So go for it.
But also your talent, your ability to work hard, and all of that definitely factors in, and you have grown. Yes. I mean, Sean and I both, as most people should know, are second careerists. And I had a lot of jobs even before I had a position as a graphic designer. I worked for so many crazy places. Like, I mean, a professional photo studio where my boss would show me like naked pictures of my predecessor in his private office, like for their Christmas card. Like, here's a B-roll, like just really weird stuff. And just feeling like, what am I doing? I have a college degree. Is this normal? I need money. And sometimes I look back or for a long time, I would look back at some of those jobs and just think like, that was so random. Why did I do that? That did nothing for me. But now, like, I can go back to each crazy job and there's a lesson, or even just career, or no, like actual technical knowledge that I learned that does help me now. And I don't know. Yeah, we just have to. I don't think people need to collect their.
I was just going to say, don't you think that has helped you warn other people?
I don't think
or like warn your family or your children, or like talking to other, like, I can count the times I've shared my experiences of things that were bad work environments or abusive or coercive. Or now when I talk to other people, I share that with them. I'm like, no, that's not okay. Or no, that is illegal. Like, you literally need to, like, that's not okay.
And creep vibes, like, listen to them, because like going, like, if you feel the creep,
listen to your instinct.
Yeah.
Listen to your gut, because there have been many jobs where I'm like, is this right? And then I go into them with an open mind, and then it turns out not to be right.
I feel like a lot of this has really shown, like, as you've been sharing with us, Abby, is like showing me especially, like, I know why I got into creating my business the way I did. And I never want to fall into and it's where I'm going with this is it's easy when we start getting into the flow, the hustle, this is how everyone's organizing their business. Sometimes we can lose sight of we are like being small business owners and that these are our companies. We can decide the type of environment we want to create for people. And we don't have to follow the norms of these like large corporate environments or things like that. So even if it's down to just, you know what, I want to try the unlimited vacation time for my people, or I want to provide flexible work schedules for my team because someone on my team wants to have a baby. Like, I feel like we get put into this like, oh, well, as you keep growing, now you have to follow all of the norms of these bigger businesses. But quite literally, we don't. And we can help create these environments for ourselves of, yeah, I want to make more money too as the owner, but that doesn't mean that my team shouldn't make more money. And it doesn't mean that just because I've learned not to deal with harassing contractors doesn't mean I need to put my team in the way of those people anymore. And I need to remember to be like the mama bear for my team too. And like, this isn't just like I think part of it is this culture of like, well, everyone, quote, pays their dues and we all have to just suck up being abused and mistreated it's like, no, we literally don't have to do that. We don't have to create that environment. And we need to continue as an industry and even wider, call out that behavior. And I know we've talked about on the show before where it's like, it's not okay. We don't have to live like this. But the more that we show that it can be done in a healthy way and demonstrate what it can look like or feel like in our companies, I think we can start to get progress made in the industry where, and maybe we're seeing some of that effect now where people aren't going to work for these environments anymore. People are like, resigning from jobs. They're just not accepting low pay. They're like, well, sorry, I don't want the job then if you're not willing to negotiate a proper pay or salary. Like, I think people should feel empowered. We're making this life transaction of get what you need out of it.
But also I think like voting,
yes.
like mothers need support, like, because maternity, I mean, having been on both sides and owning a company with a lot of mother or pregnant aged women, I guess it was hard. It was hard being a small business owner and having people go on maternity leave. Like, you want to support them and you need to support them, but it is really hard. And yeah, our American society does not support that at all.
It doesn't encourage women. It doesn't encourage it. It encourages you to be barren.
Yeah.
Punishes you exactly for having children. And it's unfortunate that happens.
It breeds resentment because, like, I think the way that our laws are set up and the lack of maternal support is it breeds resentment from the companies to women having babies. And then you're having a baby and you're like, what the fuck? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can't pay for any of this.
I also think it's a form of discrimination sometimes because then a lot of companies I've seen have, they'll hire 20 to 25-year-olds, right? Because they know that that's not, that they'll work a lot. Right. They know that they'll work a lot. They know that they will devote their lives and they don't have anything else or any other responsibilities around work. So it's just, I agree with you, Sean. I think we can do better. And I think we will offer, more supportive environments for our employees. And I think, just having these kind of honest conversations, especially your podcast, I feel has been very, very real and very transparent about what this business is. And not such a curated, perfect view of what interior design is. Like, sometimes it's annoying and sometimes it's awful and sometimes it's amazing. It's amazing at the same time, it's all of those things. Yeah, we can be more supportive of our employees. I hope that people can
and
see
each
that
other.
From this. Yes.
I mean, I think it's interesting that it's this avant-garde move of ours to share resources with our peers. I mean, I don't really think of it as competitors, even though that's technically the word. And I don't know, it's putting in, like you were saying, it's like putting into the universe what you want to get back. And if you just keep gatekeeping and being closed off to other ideas and helping each other, it doesn't come back to you.
No.
But it's coming back by just being open,
liberating
and helpful. So that's like helpful.
It's liberating to just be free with things and to not feel like I'm guarding myself. I picked that, like Abby, what you were saying is just like being able to be in every sense of that word, like authentically 100% yourself every time you show up with a client or to a project. Like that means that they're getting the best version of you, but also the best version of your creativity and your passion, and you're willing to pour your intensity into the people and the projects where you get to be the most yourself and bring the best of yourself. And I feel like that's what any client should really want, is like, if Abby really enjoys working with me, my project is going to be better too. And I want that relationship with someone, and I want that for my home too. It just comes back to us tenfold.
It really does. I can't tell you, like, I think also we were talking about the lessons that we got from like difficult jobs and things. I think working with difficult clients helped me to understand what an amazing client is, right? Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need like the worst of the worst to tell you, to show you like how bad it could actually be, so that you can be you can be so grateful for the clients that are really actually trying to work with you. And so those are lessons. And it's,
can I just have one of those though? Like I don't want multiple.
I just need one worst case scenario.
Lessons. Like I'm still in recovery from last year.
Just one a year. That's it. I don't even want one a year. I don't even want one a year.
The one I had last year like killed me for 4 months, like a third of my year probably. Like, no, I can't.
No, I had one this year or last year. It was terrible. It's just so draining for your mental health and just for your overall well-being. Like you come home and you're super drained. And that was my experience in the field too. Like I would just come home and be like, finally, I can be myself now, you know, and it's just so draining either way to have like a difficult work environment or a difficult client. It's almost the same kind of situation. But
at least we can somewhat control it and try to keep our eyes open for.
Well, we can choose now, right? Like for me, I can choose now. So I feel so much more equipped to say no, because I know the red flags now. And I can say, when I have a discovery call with somebody just contacted me the other day and said, this isn't going to be like a full design. It's just like, I have a lot of furniture and, you know, I just want to see where it goes. And I'm like, I already know I'm probably not going to take this job. Like that's not what I do. You know, it's just not what I do. And it's not to be difficult or anything. Like there's enough to go around for everybody, but I'm not the one for you. Right.
Yeah.
And so just to recognize that is so much more helpful and so much more powerful, empowering now to be able to do that.
Abby, thank you so much for being so transparent and open and sharing some really vulnerable situations. And from the moment you told us what you wanted to share, I love that you were willing to share it and open to sharing it with us so honestly. And then I know that it's a big ask to put these kinds of things out into the world for everyone else to hear. And I know that the hotties are going to hear this. And I know you're going to be getting DMs from other hotties who are sharing what their experiences have been like in the industry. And I'm really like excited to hear how those conversations can change what we do. Can you share with the listeners where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at casamarcelo.co, casamarcelo.co. And that's pretty much it.
She's a good DM.
www.casamarcelo.co. You can look at my website. But yes, I'm a DMer.
We share DMs and voice messages back and forth with each other when we hit on hot topics with each other. So I know that the conversations won't end after today. And I'm hopeful that more hotties will find you.
And I love how Yeah, I love how honest you are with your joys and struggles of early motherhood. Like a lot of us have been through it, and it's a journey. You're doing it.
It's a journey. We're doing it. We're getting through this. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. It's been great.
Of course.
Until next time,
stay hot, designers.
Thanks for listening to the Hot Young Designers Club podcast.
For more on what we talked about today, check out the show notes.
Your support helps us grow, so share with your design besties.
And subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Our conversations continue on Instagram.
And be sure to download our monthly resources on our website and our Patreon.